This is Jason Reed Pratt, author of Cry of Justice. Have you ever wanted to install political influence in nations caught in the path of the Axis and the Allies during World War II while you diddle around losing the war due to political infighting and a need to be the world leader after the war? Me too! Fortunately, I am currently playing Mark Herman's board game, Churchill, from GMT Games, and while the opportunity didn't come up in my first turn to place political markers and so to explain the similarities and differences between this and placing clandestine partisan groups, this turn I shall! Which is fortunate, since this is an absolute newbie tutorial and I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I soon will. I hope. Briefly recapping the events of spring 1943 and a little before, the Japanese, for now, have won the Battle of Guadalcanal, forcing the United States to evacuate the Solomon Islands and delaying any advance in the Southwest Pacific Theater. The United States did, however, build up some naval preparations for advance in both Pacific theaters and in the Atlantic, although the German Kriegsmarine managed to stifle any chance of advance there for now. Americans built Oak Ridge, but Stalin also got his spies into the area. The United Kingdom totally failed to push into North Africa, where the Italians sent reserves to bolster Rommel's Africa Corps. But British troops did advance into Burma from India. The Soviets were the big winners of Turn 1, and not only because they advanced a step in both the Eastern and Far Eastern theaters, rolling over very heavy resistance from German reserve armies at the Don River. Stalin also came back from behind to win the conference after Churchill and FDR spent too much time squabbling over who would take the lead managing their theaters. In fact, Stalin himself broke this ludicrous infighting by taking control of the Pacific Theater of Operations himself and assigning himself the offensive support before handing control back over to FDR. Overall, the Axis held out well, except against the Communists. Consequently, Stalin took the overall lead at 16 points against Churchill's 10 points and Roosevelt's 2. Stalin has not yet crossed the threshold where the second place player would actually be winning. Along the way, I generated some errors, which I'll make adjustments for this turn, starting before this turn in fact, with adjusting Churchill's score 5 points upward, because I forgot that whoever wins a global issue debate also scores 5 points. So in fact, almost all of Stalin's lead just vaporized. But wait, what's this? I've chosen to track potential score as well as accrued, and along that line I forgot last turn to account for a subtle rule. If the Western Allies don't make it to Berlin by the end of the game, Stalin will get 5 points whether or not he himself gets into Berlin. Since the UK and US aren't there yet, those 5 points are active for Stalin. And he takes back his 6-point instead of 1-point lead over Britain. For now. The way potential scoring works, points are frequently taken away from Stalin and or Churchill as the game progresses. Perhaps just as importantly, I completely forgot, although I noted it during my commentary for the turn, that Churchill, having won the agenda-setting phase, could promote 3 topics for discussion, not only 2. He might have won the conference with that missing topic. Or not, who knows, but to try to be fair to him this turn, I'll give him an extra topical pick, regardless if he wins the agenda again or not. We'll get to that soon. Last, and perhaps least, I mentioned in my commentary that I had totally forgotten to roll for the death of Sir John Dill after playing him during the conference. On a roll of 1 to 3, he dies of the stress, but he rolls a 5, so he's fine. For now. Wait, did I say last? Drat, I nearly forgot it again! Churchill has an ability where if he was played on the global issues topic, which he was, then win or lose, and whether or not he has a heart attack from the stress, which he didn't, he gets a free political marker to place during the war phase. That didn't happen, so this turn he'll start with 1 free political marker. Did I start this turn's commentary blathering about political markers and their similar yet different placement rules? I have returned to the beginning in a topical chiasm. All the pre-turn things done? I've passed out the basic production chips already, so it's time to flip the deck over, draw off the prior turn, and reveal Turn 2, May 1943. The Washington, D.C. Conference, codenamed Trident. Historical variant C. Hopefully, the Western Allies will be able to put aside their competition in order to pull that wagon across the stream better this time. Version C of Trident starts with Britain committing one production chip to the Western theater to help with Bolero. Stalin refuses to attend the conference, not too surprising since it's in Washington, so I'll set his block to inactive. I'll show what that means later. For the United States, there has been a deadlock with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Therefore, a U.S.-directed offensive topic must be put in the center of the conference table before the agenda proposals even start, essentially giving one of the other two sides a chance to decide where to commit the U.S. to help a front. For the Axis event, dam busters have struck in Germany's industrial heartland, the Ruhr, preventing Germany from sending one reserve army out this turn. But it'll be back next turn. Last but not least, before the conference, we all roll again for partisan networks. The UK only gets 2 partisans this time, which will go to France and to the Netherlands. 2 points up for Churchill. Stalin also rolls low, so the Soviets only get 2 networks. One goes to Cambodia Laos, taking off 2 points from Churchill, and whoops, the other is also France. The partisans cancel each other out there, and Churchill goes back a point, while Stalin picks up only 1. Fine. I'm still crushingly ahead, far enough that Winston cannot win in second place. Whereupon I totally forget to roll for Roosevelt's partisans, and I start drawing his staff and everyone else's this turn. Eek! Note to self, make sure Roosevelt gets a free partisan roll at the start of turn 3. On even-numbered turns, like this one, the staff decks don't reset. Another 7 cards are just dealt off the top. I'll shuffle all the surviving staff members back together on odd-numbered turns. Since I'm still unsure if I can roleplay all 3 sides accurately on rationales for choosing a staff member to set the agenda, I'll randomly draw 1 card each again. And wow, they're all great cards whose abilities I won't be able to use this turn now. Except for Clement Attlee up there, Great Britain's Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State, whose ability is to get worse if Churchill is active this conference, which he is. Actually, he'd be a great guy to sacrifice to set the agenda, since his discussion power of 5 is very strong, and with Britain's agenda power, that bumps him up to a 6, enough for Churchill to win the agenda phase again. Good job, opposition party leader guy! Everyone's relative strength of 6, 5, and 4 means topics will be broached close to the center of the table this time. As the agenda winner, I'll get to nominate 3 topics again, and since I forgot to nominate a 3rd topic last time, I'll get to nominate a 4th one this time. So, this early in the game, with such a solid 2nd place, I wouldn't normally bother with polymill topics. But if I've got to pick an extra topic this turn, then sure, I'll nominate the 2-2 chip, the one with the most points potentially for whoever wins it. As long as Uncle Joe over there keeps pulling ahead of Franklin, he'll eventually cross the limit where the second place player will win, and I want to be ready for that. Now, should I go ahead and choose my extra topic I skipped from last turn? Establish the topic on my track now, or keep it in reserve as a response to something else? I'll save it for a reserve reaction. As the low man out again, anything I nominate will necessarily start center table, so I might as well choose topics that benefit from ending center table, allowing me to focus on trolling my uncommunist comrades over there. I'm desperately short of materials, so strategic production seems a good idea, but perhaps more important, I'm in a position, thanks to one of my generals last turn, to declare war early on Japan. And my track to Japan is not only shorter than my allies, but fights an easier foe. If I nominate this topic, my allies will either be distracted, trying to keep me from surging farther ahead, or I win it and get a good chance to surge farther ahead. Either way, I win. I shall call this a Xanatos gambit after the Russian hero who fought those gargoyles in New York for Walt Disney or whatever. Franklin? I really want that nuclear research completed ASAP. And maybe if Winston and I aren't scrapping against each other this time, we can at least agree that one of us should win it, and not Stalin this time. As to what else? If Stalin is nominating war on Japan, maybe I should nominate the Second Front and then focus on building up for trying a double-space overrun before the Axis can build up reserves there? And no, I'm not sure I can guarantee enough naval power yet. Not that, and also enough support. Especially with my joint chiefs having dithered around so much among themselves that I may end up fighting to keep some of my military resources focused where I want. Winston picked up some strong points for winning the global issue topic last time, and Lord knows I need the points. The only remaining polymill chip, which could potentially score 5 points too, also needs production to activate it, and I might be a bit short if I can't secure the directive offensive, especially if I'm boosting nuclear research, which I should. No, this is the most efficient way to get 5 points. Back to me. Well, I have to say, I'm very much interested in cornering the market on overall theater command, and on picking up some boosts for retaining European command. So, since I've got a 4th topic this term, I'll burn 2 of my remaining 3 picks on promoting those topics again, and the 4th pick on getting some production from the US. Franklin is a decent chap, but I don't intend to let his socialistic policies bleed proto-communism into the world after the war. With that bit of surprise backstabbery, the agenda promoters go to the discard, and Stalin, as the player to the left of the agenda winner, rolls for his murderous paranoia, and passes again, and now checks over his staff to start their discussions, keeping in mind that since Stalin isn't present, he won't give pluses or minuses of that sort, and also can't advance a topic, although he can still debate one, if he replaces a staff member. And, I expect I'll be debating at some point, since my bench this turn is kind of weak. Speaking of murderous paranoia, no less than 2 of my staff might shoot someone else. That's my job! Aside from juggling the Russian roulette double threat, I've got some good topical focuses here. In particular, Lavintra Beria, head of Soviet intelligence, the NKVD, hooks up to godly power when played on an A-bomb research, and I'd sure like to snag that again while my allies are squabbling over theater leadership again. Do I want to fight for the global issue points? No, I want to be either ahead on points or crushingly ahead on points, and winning this might put me in that zone where the guy in 2nd place leads a block to beat me. Directed offense? Yeah, that might be more useful in some ways than taking the US production chip and easier to get, but I still want US production if I can get it too. Why? Because I forgot last turn to invest in naval support to open up the Murmansk supply run, which, if I can pick up early, that'll be an investment returning dividends for the rest of the war. By the same token, while the polymill chip would give me points, I don't really need raw points so much right now. So, nuclear research, the directed offense for my war on Japan, and US production if I can get it. Plus, keeping my war on Japan center table. One of my staff will give a bonus there when I play him this turn. Since I won't be playing him on global issues this turn, I might as well open strong with Vyacheslav Molotov, Foreign Affairs Minister, and yank that directed offense so far up my side of the table it will never see the light of day again. So, Franklin, you want to help me launch my Japanese campaign? I should have expected this. I blame my Joint Chiefs for putting me in this position, and I hate this so much. everything there on Winston's table that wretched ingrate. Everyone takes advantage of us because we're so generous in trying to help them fight, it ends up crippling our side of the fight. And then they complain about it. Worse, none of my staff at this conference cares a whit about protecting our offensive power, and my few people who could save the offense will be better spent elsewhere. Still, I can't trust Winston to save this for me, or rather for himself, so if I'm going to have any chance of neutralizing it, I'll send out James F. Burns from the Office of War Mobilization. That seems topically applicable. He can't rescue it entirely, but Stalin will have trouble securing it, and maybe I can rescue it completely later. Having debated that, I could choose to pass now, but I certainly don't want to. I need to get Pacific leadership back, and I've got someone who isn't great at it, but he's much worse at anything else politically. Ernest J. King, Commander of the U.S. Navy and Chief of Naval Operations. You're one of the chiefs I blame for putting that directed offense at risk, Ernest. Go do something useful. You're a force strength at Pacific leadership. I won't bother debating this. Not at this time. I may try to get it back later, though. I would love to sneak this back to me again, especially to help with my start against Japan. But, no, I'll leave it alone. Well, I expected Franklin to go after one of the theaters, probably the Pacific, and really, that's fine. I only propose them as a distraction. But let's see, can I get any of those remaining 3 topics home on my first round? Altogether, I have rather an average staff this time, with 3 very strong and 3 very weak. Let's see. Lord Beaverbrook, Minister of Aircraft Production and Supply, is generally strong at everything so long as I'm still active at the conference. He's strong enough to secure any one of those topics as long as no one debates him. Perhaps I should take the European theater home now, before Roosevelt sneaks it out from under me, reversing my whole plan. Does anyone want to debate this? I don't care about your petty squabbles, except insofar as you distract each other with your squabbling. Fair enough. We'll each get a bit of bonus for having debated our respective leaderships. Take that, Uncle. That's cooperation. Wait, what? Was that a plot between them the whole time? Remember, Molotov, we can only rely on ourselves, no one else. People's Commissar Nikolai Kuznetsov, Chief of the Soviet Navy, go get some of the United States production for our purposes. Kuznetsov will also generate some naval support for the Arctic Theater, which will help us secure more resources from the West later. Oh, you can't rely on anyone else to help you, Stalin? You ungrateful hypocrite. You mouth that one moment and then take our resources the next to make sure more of our generously donated resources get through to you. Well, Frank Knox, Secretary of the Navy, who risks and sometimes gives their lives running those convoys to you, would like to say something about that ingratitude. I hate having to waste effort on simply keeping our own budgeted resources, but at least playing him on a production issue instantly generates an extra 2 naval resources for us. Those will be handy. Now, should I pass my turn having debated? I only have 3 cards left, and I'm winning this whole conference at the moment. I doubt I can keep everything, but I don't want to be left hanging undefended at the end. But hey, while I'm at it, 2 of my 3 remaining cards are strong at polymill topics, so I might as well yank that over here too. Cordell Hull, Secretary of State, I choose you! Your 5 goes to a 7 strength on this topic. Enough of this nonsense, let's run the board and start focusing on ourselves instead of these thankless European loons. Humph! I'll have you remember that we were fighting alone, and desperately alone, against Hitler and his thugs for a whole year, all across Europe and the Mediterranean. See, now's your time. Even if we can't get these poly-mill points ourselves, don't let the U.S. have them. Now that was too much temper from the British Bulldog. I understand he thought he should use, C, was it? On something topically useful, but he needs to give the U.S. a little strength or I'll outscore them both. Indeed, Winston is fuming so hard he decided to pass his round. Has anyone ever done that yet this game? Well, I won't pass, or rather, I can't pass because I haven't debated a point since my last round. But that's fine. Now it's time for Beria to get the nuclear research over here. I doubt FDR will debate it with only 2 cards remaining, even though he must want to. Drat and blast it! That blatherskite, if he keeps it, he'll instantly pick up another 3 points, whether or not I succeed in my research at all. But I don't dare try to get it back, and I don't have anyone left strong enough to do it anyway. Come on, Winston. Stalin's spying on this doesn't help you either. I can't say I'm happy about it, but it doesn't hurt me either. This will leave me with 4 cards remaining to Stalin's 3 and Franklin's 2. I'm sorry, but I have other concerns. Winston, you total fool, you're just giving points to Stalin. This will come back to bite you in the end, mark my words. And now I have a most bitter choice. I can't pass because Churchill didn't give me anything to debate, and I didn't dare debate Stalin's cronies and waste one of my few remaining cards. So I've got to play this round. But on what? I suppose my best shot at winning the conference, or even just keeping something useful for points, is to send J. Edgar Hoover after the poly-mill chip in the center of the table. One of the others, probably Winston, will have to burn a strong card to stop me from getting it, and that'll be fewer problems for me as the conference closes out. No, I can't let this go by unchallenged, and I've got plenty of cards remaining to eat at Franklin's lead later. In fact, I've got a right strong card, Sir Stafford Cripps. He even has a street gang named after him in America, I think. Lord Keeper of the Privy Seal, whose special strength fighting to retain UK production won't be useful in this conference, so I might as well use him here, to edge that poly-mill chip, which we proposed as a topic in the first place, back onto my side of the table. Barely, but barely still counts. Now, I could pass again this round, having debated something since last round, but I feel like I need to protect that poly-mill chip from more tampering by Franklin, since I can't really be sure he'll choose to retrieve that dedicated offensive chip from Stalin. The best way to do that would be to drag something from his track onto mine that I can be sure he'll try to fight now or later. The obvious choice? The Pacific Theater leadership. Unless Stalin wants to debate this and take its leadership again this turn? Tempting. Very tempting. Very, very tempting. But no. I swear, Winston, you're going to send me to my grave. No debate from me. Yet. I must admit I am filled with amazement. At this rate I will have the last word again, and an unanswerable word at that. I will save the unspeakable Merkulov for last if I can, since that way he can't possibly shoot anyone coming after him. But who do I risk being shot by Beria? They are all weak trash, so I suppose it doesn't matter. Andrei Zdanov of the Leningrad Front Military Council. He strengthens up a bit if he's played on a production issue, and I'd like to take the U.S. production topic if I can, so good luck, Andrei. May the roulette favor you. I squarely blame you for this mess, Winston. Well, I don't care if Stalin gets that production, although I'd like it myself, of course. In principle. Amazing. Truly amazing, comrades. The capitalists will sell us the rope to hang them with, just as Marx predicted. Or Lenin, one of them. Now, Beria, I hope you will take Andrei's service to the Soviet people into consideration, and, nope, you'll need to murder him, I see. Ah, well. An occasional execution keeps the sheep in line and spines steeled for the heroic victories we need. For the people! Fine, Winston. You want Pacific leadership? Fine. I need points one way or another. And if I play Secretary of the Treasury Henry Morgenthau on that polymill chip instead of the global issues, where he'd be stronger admittedly, but can't secure it, you'll have to choose one or the other. I'm in no rush, Roosevelt. I mean, of course, I know you need the points. I'll accept the trade for military control of both theaters. Not so fast. I have this little minion whom I would like to replace at debate so that his murderous paranoia will not activate, and this is a fine time to do so. I may not be able to advance a topic, but I can still debate it. To me, all you wonderful partisans and political props. Well, I haven't debated this round, so I cannot pass. I'd like to save Sir Book to take that U.S.-directed offensive chip from Stalin if I can. So my only other option is to go after Franklin's global issue, leaving him with nothing this turn, poor blighter. But how should I do it? If I use Sir Percy Noble, I can pump up the Atlantic naval force a bit, while risking that Stalin gets the global topic into debate. But if I substitute in for Sir Noble, then I not only most likely secure the topic in effect, but I can pick up a free political marker too. Like last time, except this time I'll remember to use it. That could be handy against Stalin's markers, assuming he pays the cost to activate them. And all I risk is a 50-50 chance of not attending next conference. Yes, I'll do it. Pour me a shot glass as I advance loquaciously on my theme. Meh, advance all you like, I won't stop you. In fact, I can't. Good luck on your heart attack, you kopeck-grabbing goat. Not even a twinge. Now, if you pass, Uncle Joe, you'll get final say, but if you act, I'll get... Oh, you passed. Very well. Obviously, my final card should and shall be played on the U.S.-directed offensive, which, as soon-to-be leader of both theaters, I should naturally control anyway. Well, playing Zhigarev, the Deputy's People Commissar for Defense, on anything else would gain me nothing, except perhaps to spite the others and take away their production for no benefit anywhere. And playing him on the U.S.-directed offense on my turn gains me nothing extra, so I might as well play him now and end the conference with a Niet, and activate some offensive support from my Far East theater. With that, the conference ends. The surprise this time is not so much that Churchill won it, but that the United States looked ready to win the conference crushingly, but instead has come in dead third with literally no topics at all, having lost leadership of the Pacific Theater too along the way. FDR will have to seriously rethink his life choices for turn 3. Stalin might seem to have won 4 topics since his declaration of war on Japan stayed center table, thus in his favor. But it does stay center table, so it technically doesn't count as a 1 topic. That gives him only 3. Churchill wins the conference with 4 topics. And I'll go ahead and give Churchill his 2 political markers now, one for winning global issues last time, which I forgot to give last time, and one for winning it this time. As the winner, Churchill also gets a marker which would be kept by the players in a tabletop game, but which I'll delete when cleaning up the turn because I'm keeping a tally over here in my notes anyway. Observe and recall. While Stalin gets 5 points for a conference win, FDR or Churchill only get 3. I'll wait to adjust scores as each player resolves, but I'll mark Churchill as the winner of this phase meanwhile. On to the post-council segment. This segment has 7 phases, or really 8 I suppose, each of which are resolved in turn around the table starting with Stalin. For phase 0, let's call it, I'll go ahead and score the conference winner, Churchill, his 3 points up to 17. Not quite close enough to trigger a winning second place, but closer. Next, all directed offenses are placed. Only Churchill won this. That loss to the Italians in North Africa this spring was embarrassing, so I'll get Franklin to help me here this summer. Phase 2, conditional issues. Everyone effectively agreed, if accidentally, that Stalin could declare war on Japan, so I'll place that over on his Far East track. Now he can try attacking Manchuria. This, to be honest, was awfully dumb and short-sighted of the Western Allies because Stalin has the shortest track to an Axis power and faces the least opposition here. Phase 3, production resolutions. Stalin won a production chip from the U.S. And everyone won the strategic production chip again, so everyone gets an extra production this turn. Phase 4, production allocation. Stalin goes first. Well, I would naturally like to crush my enemies beneath the treads of my tanks again. I got distracted doing that last turn when I should have invested in extra production as soon as possible. So this time, 2 productions will go to add naval support to the Arctic theater. And now, as long as the Huns don't send reserves to hammer those boats down, I will get a guaranteed production chip from supply convoys every turn. Plus occasionally extra from the Murmansk run. Really, I should put 4 supports here to be safe, but I still want to do some other things this turn. Anyway, I'm safe until next turn as the Hitlerites don't have extra reserve army to deploy anywhere even on a 1 in 6 chance this turn, thanks to my western allies busting those dams this spring. Do I want to invest in partisans and political supports? Yeah, sure, I might as well place them since I won them. I can't place them yet, but I pay for and receive them. This will reduce my chances of busting Manchuria open, but not a lot. My final 2 productions will go there, and it isn't likely the Imperialists will send a reserve to oppose me, so I've probably got an 80% win chance later. I should note here, Stalin has forgotten or didn't check the rule for those Imperialists, but we'll get to that later. I may have won no topics this time, but I've still got a lot of production. Although I've got to give 1/3 of it, 2 chips, to Winston for his North African campaign. Well, if he gets far enough, I'll get a little score there too. And he has to add some support of some kind to Bolero, so no doubt he'll choose naval, and that's almost an even trade. My first chip will be dedicated to putting nuclear research odds in my favor, of course. I should remember here that these 2 extra naval markers are thanks to Frank Knox, who triggered them when I played him on trying to secure my production chip back from Stalin early in the conference. I should have also picked up 2 offensive support chips from Admiral King, which can only be used in one of my Pacific fronts. I totally forgot why those chips were there, though, and I thought I mistakenly detailed them from Admiral King, because maybe, duh. So I'm going to erase them and replace them with offensive chips, which, on reflection, I'll put in the Southwest Pacific front. Strictly speaking, I should wait until that phase for deploying support, but whatever. After that senior moment, I'll spend 1 to buff up naval support again in the Western Europe theater, and 2 for a pair of offenses in the Central Pacific theater. And for my directed offensive requirement, I'll be really nice and give Winston 2 naval supports, which, since we've already eliminated our Mediterranean naval threats, means he can now advance up the southern front as far as he likes, whenever he likes. That's called cooperation, Winston. Teamwork. You should try it. Oh, and I'm playing my military support out of phase anyway, so I'll exercise my right as leader of the Pacific Theater this turn to put 1 more naval support in the Southwest Pac front, just in case the Japanese get lucky. I detect a note of rebuke. I have never been ungrateful to my friends across the Atlantic for their unfailing support of our war efforts. But we have been fighting this war since literally the first day, so I expect my generals to be given priority due to experience. As for helping, as you can see, I will add some naval support to the Atlantic, knowing full well that those dastardly villains will sally forth every season to whittle away at us. As to putting our own experience to work, for our naval or offensive support as leader of the European theater this turn, I'll choose offensive support and send it to North Africa, where I assure you I appreciate the permanent aid you chose to give there. You could have sent temporary offensive support for 1 season. I'll appreciate your appreciation when you walk the talk, Winston. Then how's this for walking? Rather than guaranteeing our win in North Africa with my last 4 production, I shall split it to send 2 offensives to the Atlantic front as well. Let us succeed at last with Bolero, and prepare for Overlord this year. I'll drink to that! Hitler will have to fight 2 fronts then. And then we'll see who gets to Berlin faster, these bickering bouffons or me. Oh, what? I was saying that as part of allocating production, I was supposed to receive my partisans and political influence now, even though I can't place them, But I forgot to do that earlier, even though I talked about it, and even though I paid for them. I'm very glad I remembered. I would hate to forget to such a thing as to receive my political points. Phase 5 settles any discussions about theater leaderships. This not only sets up the nominal supports received next turn, but adds support this turn for each leadership discussed in one. And since Churchill won both discussions, he not only gets both bonuses, but an extra third bonus for winning both discussions. Now, as to our expertise in this theater, you mean your past history of defeating stalemates? I shall proceed to send overwhelming force against North Africa, just enough to be sure to push back that fox Rommel and his Italian cohorts. I'd heard that Roman pun, though I would rather try at least a little for a leapfrog. Too bad I put that offensive support to Bolero, instead of guaranteeing Bolero succeeds, I see. I'm not stupid, Winston. You make a show of cooperation, which will barely risk you anything, and meanwhile you thrust ahead to prepare to invade the continent from the south, which will gain you significantly more prestige in the long run, and in the short if you can succeed before we hit Normandy. Well, I can't blame your strategy, but if you want me to think you mean to cooperate, then with your Pacific leadership, yes, we need to root out those communists in the colonies, and to do that I must advance out from Burma, along the track which will naturally give you and only you any prestige. Well, again, I can't blame you, but don't expect me to pay attention to your talk of cooperation again. This drama is priceless. Phase 6, A-bomb research. Stalin won that discussion, so he automatically advances a step and picks up another 3 points, to 25, increasing his lead over Churchill's stumbling coalition. The Western Allies, meanwhile, roll a 3, so in fact the production wasn't needed after all, but insurance plays the odds. The U.S. moves its research up to Hanford. Phase 7, global issues. This was discussed, and Churchill won that discussion again, so that's 5 more victory points for a total of 22, edging him up to within a point of a second-place win. He already moved the US-UK global issue marker last time, so the only other marker he can move is the UK-Soviet marker, for a free Europe, which means anyone can put political markers anywhere in the Western theater. Neutrality meant that no one could place any markers there, though they might be randomly placed by events. This is important for me because with 2 political markers, I would have nowhere to put them except in the colonies where, strictly speaking, I don't want them. Although, if pressed, I would rather have my influence there than anyone else's, of course. I welcome a free Europe because the good news of communist freedom can be freely promoted in all nations currently languishing under fascist boots. We, where international socialism replaces national socialism. They are not true socialists, but despots who murder and imprison their own defenseless people. Why, you raging hypocrite! Now, let's save it for after the war. Yes, my good little socialist comrade, sort of. Little birds should be careful where they sing. With that, we enter the war segment, or phase, or whatever. Anyway, at the start, everyone gets 1 partisan chip to place with any other partisan or political chips they've gathered this turn, wherever they legally wish. The player with the most such chips goes first, and that's Stalin, placing partisan chips first. I will not put more investment into the colonies. Not yet. That was foolish of me, really, to support the well-meant socialist revolutions there at all last turn. As the Western Allied front moves out of Burma, it will clean out my influence. Once. Any effort there will be lost. Once. Then, once the storm front is passed, then I can start whittling away at Winston's points in that area, or toppling his dominoes, so to speak. By the same token, I might as well put my partisans into the eastern mainland European nations, not in Finland for now. Once I advance through, I will clean out any capitalist rats, so no reason for me to waste strength on Hungary now, but I want those areas safe from political problems afterward. Meanwhile, I get 3 points, pulling my lead up from the Kopek grabbers creeping again. Poor Franklin. No polymill chips at all this turn. His luck is just dreadful. In fact, I accidentally forgot to roll for FDR's 2 or 3 random placements during the start of this turn, remember, but I've made a note to ensure he gets them in turn 3. But not as dreadful as sending one of my partisans to root out one of his only partisan groups in Vietnam, eh? What? You're all heart, old chap. I hardly know whether or not to taunt them with having worsened my overall lead against them both by that move. Churchill has 24 points now, but Roosevelt only 1. My 28 beats their 25. Yeah, I'll let him figure it out. And I'll have you know that I did get the minimum 1 free partisan this turn, Winston, which I'll play in the Middle East since I'd only worsen Stalin's overall lead against us by fighting you in the colonies again. I heard what Stalin chuckled to himself, although Winston actually did improve our relative positions by 1 point, communists and their budgetary math. Now comes the time to place the first political alignment markers in the game so far. They have rules similar to clandestine networks, except only one political alignment can exist in a minor, a nation or a colony, at a time. Partisans can have 2 chips of the same color. And they can only be placed in minors who already have a partisan network in their favor. Partisans can't replace political markers directly, but players can open up political markers for regime change by changing partisan markers. I'll demonstrate this later if we get that far. Global issues directly affect the rules for placing political influence markers. Since right now both of Churchill's global issues are active, Stalin, who goes first here because he had a greater overall total of polymill chips, cannot put political alignments in the colonies right now, but he can put them anywhere in the West where he has partisan influence. He chooses Bulgaria and Poland, 2 of the 3 areas with his partisans. There would be no practical difference if he had chosen to put one in the Baltic states instead. Here comes a bit of a rules quirk. Partisan chips grant 1 point each, up to 2 per area, but they only grant those points if there is no alignment marker at all there yet, yours or any other player's. So putting political markers there drops Stalin 1 point, because it deactivates his partisan marker scoring, times 2 areas for 2 points. But each poly marker grants 3 victory points, so on the balance, Stalin went up 4 points. He started at 28, so that should have been minus 2 to 26, plus 6 to 32. But I fumbled the calcs a bit, communist overlords and budget math, and only marked it up to 30. I can't make too much fun of how poor I am at communist math, though, because I made the same mistake for Churchill. I'll owe him an extra 2 points at the start of turn 3 also. He puts one of his political markers into Hungary, which Stalin's approaching front won't be able to eliminate. The partisan group, yes, but not the polychip. That means if Stalin gets a chance, he'll want to put polychips in the colonies even before Churchill's front advances, since that won't affect polychips. But he currently can't, because Churchill's colonialism global issue keeps anyone from putting political alignment there except for Churchill. With all that nonsense finished and scores not correctly adjusted, it's time for what? In case you don't remember from last time, combat in this game is entirely automatic. First, the European theater, where Germany assigns its reserves according to this chart. 1 reserve has been temporarily deactivated thanks to a card event this turn. Is any front trying to enter Germany? No, so all available reserves will be deployed. 1 reserve always gets sent east to meet the Soviet front. The Western Front hasn't left the Atlantic box, so the Kriegsmarine sallies forth to notch off a naval support. The Western Front hasn't landed on mainland Europe, so 4 more reserves go east to face the Soviet front. Notice that this is a waste. 1 reserve alone would decisively block the front's advance this time because no one assigned it any offensive support. Germany has no more reserves remaining this turn, so that's it. Except for the Italian army, which goes up to meet the Mediterranean front to vaporize 1 offensive support. The Western Front needs to clear the Atlantic. Each front has an inherent minimum 2 strength, plus another 2 points of strength for each point of offensive support, so 3 times 2 equals 6. I'll have to roll a 6 or less to advance. Ouch. 10. Maximum failure. Delete that temporary offensive support and send the Kriegsmarine back to base to celebrate, rest, and reload. The Eastern Front automatically fails to advance, so all the reserve markers go back to Germany. I should probably work on a way to show them still deployed next time, since it looks weird for Axis forces to return home, which they aren't really doing. Things look a lot better for the Mediterranean front, with a total of 4 times 2's offensive support plus 2 front strength equals 10. That's an automatic advance, although we don't have enough to try for a 2-step breakthrough. The Allies push the Axis out of North Africa. The Italians retreat to rethink just how much they want Mussolini running those trains on time. Down to the Pacific Theater. Stalin hasn't entered Manchuria yet, so all the Imperial Army reserves are active. No front is trying to enter Japan, so all the reserves will go out. Stalin has left the Far East starting place, and he forgot that 2 armies will always go up to meet him once he has done so, even if he can't get into Manchuria yet. No front is trying to enter a B-29 space, so Japan does not automatically send any armies there. The Imperial Navy rolls a 2, so they sail out to eliminate a naval support for the Central Pacific Front according to their priorities. The Imperial Navy now has to roll to see if their reserve is eliminated, and they luck out with a 5, so they'll survive another season. The 2 remaining Imperial Army reserves are sent randomly to the Solomon Islands and to the Marshall Islands, where they each eliminate 1 offensive support. Speaking of which, I forgot that the 2 armies going up to meet the Soviets also eliminate 2 support, which shall happen each turn now that Stalin left his marking box, making things a lot easier for his allies on the other 3 tracks. Blip those off, and that leaves 1 support times 2, plus the front times 2, equals a roll of 4 or less needed to advance. Yeah! So many natural 10s! Since Stalin failed, his declaration of war on Japan will have to be discussed again if he wants to try again. His fellow allies, I can tell you, are wondering if maybe this is just as well. Great Britain put in enough offensive support in Burma to guarantee a front advance into the Kra Isthmus, but not enough to roll for a breakthrough attempt. As the front enters, 2 red partisan networks are wiped out, decreasing Stalin's score by 2 points and increasing Churchill's score by 2 points times 2 colonies. Because he gets points if the colonies are free of political manipulation. Over to the Central Pacific Front, I was going to tally various things, but it doesn't matter because there isn't enough to overcome yet another natural 10 roll. The Southwest Pacific needs a roll of 4 or less, however, and rolls a 4. The Allies clear the Solomon Islands. This ends Turn 2, Spring of 1943. The score so far, for the United Kingdom, 32 points. The screen only shows 30 points because I misunderstood how political influence scores compared to partisans. I'll be fixing that at the start of the next episode. The USSR, 30 points. The same problem here in not reading the political marker scoring rules correctly, to be fixed next episode. The United States started with 2 non-political clandestines and ends with 2 non-political clandestines, and so they still have 2 points. Has Churchill taken the lead? Actually, no. He and Stalin are currently tied. That's because Churchill, like Stalin, is 20 or more points ahead of the last place player, currently the US, so the second place rule is currently triggered. But the second place player, currently Stalin at 30 points, doesn't have enough support from the United States at 2 points to beat Churchill's current 2 points. 7 turns remain to beat the Axis. One of the United States superpowers is to come back from way behind. But can FDR concentrate his strategy in time to do that? Can one of his other allies trigger an early win before the US roars back? And would an early end to the game give the win to first or to second place? The Axis is putting up a stiff defense so far, so can they go the distance and force a conditional peace? Whatever else happens, if you turn in next time, one thing is certain. I will lose twice. Doom, 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 doom. Amen. 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 Amen.
dum